Hello and welcome to episode 92 of the Pos-cast with Rabbi Shmuel Posner, myself, Seth Hellman. Rabbi, how are we doing today?
Baruch Hashem. It's so cold.
I don't know how wide the camera angle goes or how much people can tell, but Rabbi is wearing a hoodie right now.
I'm just wearing it because the heat in the basement stopped working, and I was there, and I usually wear this when I go on campus, but it's very warm. I think hoodies are a good thing.
I was
Anyway,
mentioning earlier today, before we started recording, I don't know that I've ever seen the Rabbi in a jacket that wasn't his Shabbos jacket, like a regular suit jacket, or the green sweater that he's usually wearing.
green sweater.
Yeah, you have that sweater that's like it's not super thick, but you usually wear it on the Pos-cast. It's
No,
got the
it's gray,
pockets.
not green.
That's gray? I guess it is. Yeah, right. Whatever the sweater is that you're in the photo, that's the photo on the
Right.
Spotify, right? Where it's that little, yeah.
That I'm a gray sweater guy. Everybody knows
Okay.
that. Gray sweater guy. Okay, so this week, what do we go on? We have great things going on. We have the yard site of the Alter Rebbe on Friday. We had the yard site of the Rambam on Monday. On Monday. Yeah. So these are two great people. And Chabad has obviously a big connection to the Alter Rebbe, who wrote the Tanya and the Shulchan Aruch and the Rambam also. Since the Rebbe started telling us to learn Rambam, we're doing Rambam 3 chapters of Mishnah Torah every day. Some people are doing Sefer HaMitzvos because the Rambam wrote a book called Sefer Mitzvahs, just a list of the mitzvahs, like a short paragraph on each mitzvah. So when they set up the 3 chapters a day, they set up the mitzvahs of the day parallel to it. So sometimes during the same mitzvah for a few days in a row, because in the Mishnah Torah you could have 10, 15, 20 chapters on one subject. And many times the subject has a number of mitzvahs involved and connected to it, sometimes not. So it depends. So that's or some people learn 1 chapter a day. So the Rebbe once talked about the similarities of the Rambam to the Alter Rebbe. And if you think about it, both of them are like major figures on the chronology of Jewish people. The Rambam was the first one who compiled an extensive book that included all the mitzvahs in an orderly way. You can just open it up and look, because normally you learn Talmud. You'll have in Gemara Shabbos talks about Shabbos, but you'll find reference to it throughout the Talmud. It doesn't give any clarity exactly what the halacha is always. So the Rambam compiled, in fact, in his introduction, the Rambam wrote that if you learn Chumash and learn my book, you'll know everything you need to know, which got people a little upset because it was like, what? No more Gemara. Was going to, but he didn't mean that you don't have to learn Gemara. It just meant if you want to have a clarity on all of Torah, you can learn the Mishnah Torah, learn Chumash, and then learn Mishnah Torah, and it explains in detail every mitzvah in the Torah that there is. So yeah, so even when we're learning 3 chapters a day, which you don't spend hours and hours doing it. It could take an hour, take 45 minutes, take a little more than an hour. You get familiar with every subject in the Torah that there is. So if you learn a Gemara, you'll spend, even though Gemara incorporates different subjects under every topic that it's talking about, but here you get like you go through everything thoroughly. How well you remember it's a different story, but at least you have a basic awareness of it, and you know where to go back and look at it. Like, oh, I remember I learned that in the Rambam. You go look and check it out. And if you're doing it year after year after year, you actually do become a lot more familiar with a lot of more details. So, and the Rambam also famously wrote the Moreh Nevuchim, the Guide to the Perplexed, which was a guide for people that were perplexed. So, and the Alter Rebbe wrote the Shulchan Aruch. Shulchan Aruch, the world called the Shulchan Aruch Harav, because the Alter Rebbe is known as Harav, the Rav. But he wrote a comprehensive. So you have the Beis Yosef writes a Shulchan Aruch, then you have the commentaries around it, and so Alter Rebbe takes that and just makes it into one flowing compilation. So you have all the opinions that came after the Beis Yosef, which wrote his they were like 400 years ago, then he puts it together into one flowing thing. So it's not like the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, which is very brief without reasonings. It's more it was more comprehensive than that, but it is covering all basically the halachas that would apply on a daily basis. So that's a lot in common that the Alter Rebbe and the Rambam have. Both wrote in Nigla and in Chassidus, both in the revealed part of Torah, halacha, and also in the mystical part. There are differences, of course, and when we do soul mass, we always talk, what's the difference between the Guide to the Perplexed and Tanya? That the Guide to the Perplexed is more of a philosophical discussion about questions of faith and belief. And the Tanya, the first section for sure, the second section talks about understanding how God creates the world constantly. That is a little more philosophical. But the first section of the Tanya talks about the animal soul and the godly soul, and the importance of doing mitzvahs and Torah and how it affects you, affects it. So, and in his introduction, Alter Rebbe writes that this is in place of the meetings, the personal meetings he would have with people. So now that he knows who his audience is and has spoken to them so extensively, he's not able now to write a book that would address their questions and their struggles. So this is, you got to think about it. The Rambam's writing in a time of like there's philosophical debates going on about Judaism. The Alter Rebbe is writing in his time, in his place. It wasn't in Russia at that time in the late 1700s, the early 1800s. It wasn't philosophical challenge you had. They're like practical things. You get up in the morning, and you're living in a small village, and you're struggling because financially things are difficult, and then you have your personal struggles. Why should I serve Hashem? How do I serve Hashem? So it's addressing like very different audiences. And in fact, I once learned Tanya with this, not a student, an older guy, and he learned to learn, and he said, "This is amazing, but I don't believe in God." It's like, oh, okay. So I guess I didn't teach him that well. But in the first section of Tanya, like the fact that God exists is a given. You start with, every time you write a book, you start with certain axioms. This is a given. In the second section of Tanya, Alter Rebbe talks about understanding the idea that Hashem created the world and is constantly creating the world, and otherwise the world wouldn't exist. That's more. That tends to bolster one's understanding, hence belief in Hashem. But the first part of Tanya doesn't really get into that. That's not really the point of it. It's like the struggle, the inner struggle between the godly soul, the animal soul, and what do you accomplish every time you do something good? What happens if you do something negative? So it's more like a guide for a practicing Jew. I still remember the first time, one of the first people Chani and I met when we were here was this woman who had was getting into Yiddishkeit, getting more observant. I'm not going to mention her name, but she did continue along that path until today, and she's somebody that's still around. I don't know if she still is, but past few years ago she was still in Boston. And she went to a certain shul and said, "I can't believe it. I go to the shul and people are talking in shul like she was a fresh Baltruva. She just came back, and she couldn't understand if these are supposed to be observant Jews, what's going on with them?" And here I am like a newbie on shlichus. I'm like, oh, you have to understand that everybody has a godly soul, an animal soul, and even though they essentially are observant Jews, but they still have a struggle. So sometimes and I was like, I always remember that because it was meaningful to me that somebody came with an issue, a question about Judaism, and it's like, yeah, it's in Tanya. Like, you learn this stuff in yeshiva, and you think, okay, who does it apply? It's, for me, it's very meaningful, but I'll meet somebody on the street or someone will come to Chabad, and they're going to have a question. I'll be able to answer it from Tanya. The answer is yes, absolutely. Which, of course, now that's so natural. Every time you're talking to people, you always take who they are and try to figure it out according to what the Alter Rebbe taught us about how we understand the inner workings of a Jew, to be able to help them with their questions, their struggles, and challenges they're having in life. So that's the commonality and the differences in some ways between Alter Rebbe and the Rambam. And since their yahrzeit is both this week, so we should tap into the wealth of teachings that they left for us and connect to them as great leaders and inspirers of us in our generation. So there's a little, I just looking, I was flipping through and where the Rebbe talks about the Alter Rebbe, and especially connected to his yard site. So he mentioned this famous. There's a famous story about the Alter Rebbe. It's famous. I say famous because in the Haggadah, with the Rebbe's interpretation, explanations of it, he brings this story when he talks about the Seder plate. If the Seder plate should be made out of silver, and talks about what the Rebbe had or didn't have, and then mentions that the Alter Rebbe had a snuff box that was made out of silver. Someone gave it to him as a gift. And when he gave it to him, the Alter Rebbe said, "Oh, you want to corrupt my sense of smell as well? Like, we're distracted by so many things in the world. Our eyes are what we hear, what we see, our taste for sure. But smell, like, cool. Nobody walks around like, oh, I'm going to go now and have a great smell. I'm going to enjoy myself. He said that's the Alter Rebbe's commenting was like, oh, you want to corrupt my sense of smell as well. So he took this little box that holds this snuff and had a cover on it, and somebody's telling the story. He said he broke off the cover because it's made out of silver to use as a mirror to see if his tefillin are straight. So the Rebbe corrected him and said, no, he didn't break it. He took out the hinge, and that's separated because the Alter Rebbe was not into breaking the world but fixing it. So the idea of like not to break the world. So obviously, pulling out the hinge, you're basically separating two things, but you haven't broke anything. If you wanted to, you could replace it. Versus cracking it off, you basically, now it's broken. You can't put it together anymore. So the idea being that we're not here to break the world. The world is created by Hashem, and Hashem says, I want to have a dwelling place in this world. We want to make the world a godly place. We have to figure out how to adapt or focus the world in such a way that it's fit to be the way Hashem wants it to be, but not to go out there and destroy it and blow it up and cause havoc in the world, but to do it in a way that the world, ultimately, when we go into the world and we're saying we're Jewish, we're going to eat kosher, we're going to keep Shabbos, that sometimes can rub wrong with the world. But then, so what you want to do is you want to go in there and like bang your hand on the table and say, I won't come into work for Shabbos, and if you fire me, I'm going to sue you. No, you want to go in and just very nicely say to the person, you understand that it's important for a Jew to keep Shabbos, and in that way, have them agreeing to it in an agreeable way, not in a confrontational way. So the idea of breaking versus not breaking is, are you confronting the world and destroying the world? Or are you coming to it in a way that you're infiltrating the world and convincing it that keeping the ways of Hashem is correct and proper and good for everybody? And that's really that's the whole point, to make the world a godly place, not to the world as it is. If the world is not the world, Hashem says, I want to have a dwelling place in the lowest realm. The lowest realm is the physical world versus all the spiritual worlds. So if you change the nature of the world, then you haven't made the dwelling place in the world. You've changed the world. So you want to elevate the world, but not change it. So a great example is some guy who's on campus who's wearing a yarmulke, or a guy or two people that meet in a college classroom and are having a Torah class there. So then you're not breaking it, you're using it and elevating it. Like our good friend here in Boston, what's his name? His name is Zev Tzvi. Anyway, so he's a musician. He went to China. I'm like, for like a month. Like, well, you're crazy. What are you going to China for? Oh, his band is going to have some gigs there. And today he got back, I guess this week or last week, because we usually learn once a week. So he sends a picture. In the background, you see like this, I guess he's on some kind of a hill or a mountain. You see this valley, and he says, and he's wearing his talis and his tefillin. It says, talis and tefillin amongst the rice paddies. Like, oh, that's amazing. It's amazing. In China, he's wearing tefillin. And this wasn't like in one of these big cities, Shanghai, Beijing. It was somewhere out in the boonies. And he's wearing tefillin there. Like, oh, man, this is Mashiach. Bringing, nobody ever put on tefillin there before. Probably not. I don't know. But anyway, now it made sense. That was your mission, to put on tefillin in all these places. So what you're doing is you bring God. I was just happy he got out of China. They're a little crazy there, the Chinese. But that was such a beautiful thing that he did that. So that's the whole idea, not to use the world and to and to channel godliness into the world, not to break the world and impose it upon the world. Anyways, that's a little bit about the Alter Rebbe and the Rambam. So along those lines, because we always love the HP stories, Hashgacha Pratis. So it's a car story. So
you were driving along, you saw a car, it had a license plate, the number 770 was on it, and then
no. I'm telling the story. So
I like how you corrected that you were the one that was telling the story, not that the way I told the story was wrong.
No, I'm sure you have your stories too. So anyway, so the tire light's on in my car, which is extremely annoying. Now it's good if it lets you know that your tires are not have a flat or they're leaking or something, but the tires are fine. And so anyway, so I went to this gas station. I have to get my car checked get the
oil changed.
No, you guys got the registration sticker. What's it called?
Oh yeah, you have to get it inspected.
The inspection. So I wanted to make sure the light was off before I went there. So I went to this place. I put air in and then I said to the guy, and I don't usually go to this guy, but it's on Harvard Street. I happened to be there. I said to him, will it pass inspection if the tire light's on? He said, yeah. They check the tires, make sure that the tires are safe, but the tire light doesn't affect anything. I said, oh, great. So I said, could I do it now? I said, no, you got to come back in half an hour. I came back in 40 minutes, and he gives me a hard time. Oh, you said a half an hour. It's an hour. I said, no, it's not an hour. It's 40 minutes. Then I found out that he's a Jewish guy. Okay, great. And so there's two guys sitting there waiting, get their car inspected. So I turn to the guy, and he stands up. He gives me a Shalom Aleichem, tells me his name, like OMH, because I know this guy because he went to school to Northeastern. This before Mendy was here, so it's more than 10 years ago. And he did Sinai scholars. He used to come to Chabad House. So I said, oh, wow, how you doing? Yada, 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 yada. And then I said, oh, man, I can't believe it, because I usually take my tefillin with me. And I didn't have my tefillin with me in the car. I'm like, can't believe it.
It's a rookie mistake, Rabbi.
Yeah, but the good thing is that it was Harvard Street, so it's like 2 blocks away from Rabbi Lerner's Chabad House.
Right, yeah.
I said, "Can I just wait? I'll be right back." So I go running to I get the tefillin, come back. The waiting room in the gas station is not big. So I'm there, and I put on tefillin, and the owner, the guy, the Jewish guy, is kind of an oldish, grumpy guy. He's like, afterwards he wasn't so happy he did. I said, oh, I'm so sorry. He said, next time don't do it here. I said, I'm sorry, but this is what happened. So that was a great Hashgacha Pratis. I connected to this guy, and that's that. Here's another thing. So I get up in the morning at 5:00. At 5:30, there's a fellow in Crown Heights who gives this class on the 3 chapters of Rambam. So there's like 6 or 7, or I don't know how many guys are there, but I do know that he also has it on, like does a chat on phone. I'm not sure. It's like a WhatsApp group. You can. So it's from 5:30 to 6:30. So I learned Rambam with him. I mean, he leads the class. I just listen and follow along, or usually I get ahead of him because he's a little bit too slow for me. And then at 6:30 I go to Brookline, go to the mikveh, and then I go daven. Sometimes here, sometimes at the Shela house, whatever. Anyway, so when I go there in the morning, I don't want to talk to anybody. Don't talk to me. It's 6:30 in the morning. I want to go to the mikveh. I want to get out of there. I want to do my thing. Don't chit chat with me. I want to get. For me, if the mikveh takes more than 6 minutes, I'm like, get undressed, dunk, dry out, boom. So I don't talk to anybody. It's my rule. If someone speaks to me, I'll respond, but don't engage me. Like, don't walk in like, hey, how's it going? Like, don't talk to me. Leave me alone. Anyway, so
the rabbi is not a morning person. That's what we're learning.
Anyway, and there usually there's 1 or 2 people there, and I know who they are because I see them almost daily. But I don't think. And there's one guy in particularly who actually when I daven at the Bos, he davens here also. I don't know who he is. He's a Sephardi guy. I can tell that because the way he puts on his tefillin, the whole business. And sometimes I'll nod to him and be this, but I don't have conversation. I don't start conversations with people in shul. These are from people. What am I going to talk to them about? And I daven, they daven. It's like we're friendly, but we're not friends, and we don't just chit chat. Because that's not what I go there for. I like going there because I can just go there. I can daven, I can leave, and I don't have to hang around and schmooze with anybody. Anyway, so after you come out of the mikveh, this is the whole point. You wash your hands until Yadayim. Like every time you don't make a bracha, but every time you bathe or you do the same thing also, or you take a haircut, you do until Yadayim. So outside there's like two sinks. So there's this one guy who I don't usually meet him there, but I know, he goes before, go later. My time is not exact. His time is not exact. But I noticed that after he leaves, the washing cup is always full of water. It's full. So I figured out that after I've never seen him do it because he's before me, after me. But so I realized that after he washes, he fills up the cup, which is so brilliant. So you don't have to, while he's drying his hands, he lets it fill up. So I came out today and both cups were full. Oh, this is so cool. So I washed my hands and then I did the same thing. I refilled it before I left. That's number one. Number two is this Sephardi guy that I never talked to. He was going to go into the mikvah. So he was taking off his jacket and putting it on the table where my coat was. So I'm putting on my coat and I'm thinking, okay, I'll put on my jacket, put on my hat, put on my coat, and I'll leave the way I usually do. But he's there. So I turned around to him and said, "Good morning." And he smiled and said, "Good morning." And it was he was like, I think he was shocked because I never ever speak to him. Because I see him in shul. What's there to speak about? I'm not going to say good morning in shul. But he was like, this is a moment. So I thought about this. It's so, little things that can mean so much. This guy filling up the water, I've never thanked him for it because by the time I finish washing, he's in shul doing something. I'm not going to go over to him, hey, thank you for filling up. And by the time I got to the top of the stairs, I completely forgot about the fact that I washed my hands and the water was full. So, but just the fact that, that it triggered me to say, I'm going to be nice. That was so nice that it put me into a especially good mood at 6:40 in the morning. And I said good morning to this guy. And I think that was good. That was a good thing. So little acts of goodness and kindness on the day before. So that was that. So those are a couple of things that have been on my mind. Now, another thing that's been on my mind is the world. So the Pos-cast doesn't usually comment on political things or things of that nature. We try to keep it, holy and elevated. Even though we had Shabbos Kestenbaum last week, it's a little out of character for what we usually do, but he's definitely a fascinating, interesting guy. The thing that took me the most, because you see him. He talked at the Republican National Convention, before the election, and he's been in the news. And you see, he's like he said himself. He's basically what he's doing now is speaking engagements. And so you think wow, this is a pretty confident type of guy who's out there, spreading the message. And he spoke about the year that he was in Harvard, how isolated he felt. Because a lot of his friends, Jewish and a lot of them not Jewish, didn't want anything to do with him. And I was like, wow, to me, that was fascinating because it was it wasn't just talking about the issue, the technicalities of it and this and that. As a person that I said, oh my goodness, this poor guy. I would have gone over to Cambridge and give him a hug and tell him, you don't realize that people who are in public representing something that's big, as an individual, how do they feel about it? How do they feel as a person? When you're out there and everybody's talking about you and you're giving a speech to hundreds of people or thousands of people, and you think, oh, you're getting all this fame and all this notoriety. But then when you come back to school and your friends don't want to talk to you, that's scary. That's I mean, I think the point is that, again, the same idea. If you reach out to people, if you see somebody or know somebody, and you never know. You never know. You have friends you haven't spoken to a while. You got to give them a call and see how they're doing and what's up with them. So so I'm just, these are life lessons that I'm not learning them, but it's being reinforced. And every time you see that, you realize how easy it is to lift somebody up and help them, just because you care about them. You show them some care. So that's him. But we did have an election, and President Trump became president. And since we're a nonprofit, we can't endorse any candidate. So is he good for the Jews? So, I read Jewish websites only, and they're kind of excited.
Yeah, I mean, he did a lot. What was it, yesterday, the day before that? Was it Monday?
Monday, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he pulled all the funding from the UN refugee thing, and then he pulled all of the restrictions on weapon sales to Israel, and so I mean, yeah, for the moment, he's doing stuff that's helping. I mean, the concern that I'm always happy to see someone who is outwardly doing things that are supporting Israel and trying to make Israel safer. The only concern I have is that he's not the most. He's a lot like me in the sense that he doesn't really have that filter, right? Like he's a politician, obviously, but like he doesn't necessarily, like, I guess he probably in a lot of ways plays the politics games, but he kind of just like goes and says things. And so that would be my concern, is that there's a delicate touch that's going to be required to try to get everyone back in one piece and try to find a way for there to be peace in the future. And so that would be my only concern. But I'm also not a politics expert, so that's
Right.
as far as my
Right.
knowledge goes on that.
No, I think you're right. I think people appreciate that. Like, you ask him a question, he answers it like you would have a normal human being, not just like, quoting something that somebody told me he should be saying, just repeating that over and over again. There's certain humanity to that. At the same time, it's also, a bit of a loose cannon, what's going to come out of his mouth. But I think also policy-wise, if you look at the things that he's doing, no Jew should or could argue that doing good things to Israel is good and is great. But some of the other things are like a little like why is he, like, doesn't make any sense and doesn't seem. And if you look at them a little more carefully, you'll see like, no, that doesn't make, that's not right. That's not something you should have done. That's wrong. So I'll give you one example. Again, I don't get dragged into this, but like giving a pardon to all the January 6th perpetrators. Like, no, that's wrong. It's like somebody, if there's witnesses and you have a proper court case, and that person actually struck a police officer, why were you pardoning a person like that? There's no excuse for that whatsoever. It never should happen. That's a bad thing to do. And if the punishment it was decided by the court, why just let him get away with it? So to me, that was like, wow, that's weird. Some of them you want to say like they wasn't a big deal. Okay, I'm not going to argue every single one of these cases. I'm just saying, just this blanket, everybody goes free. Like, what? That's just one example. And there's other examples. I just don't want to get into it. I just want to, because my point is that there's nobody that's 100% good and there's nobody 100% bad. And I think for a Jew specifically, we have to know that the only truth that's all good is the Torah. And until we have a president who asks, like, has a bezdin telling him what to do every time to do something, it's not going to happen. And so it's not like this one is totally good and this one's totally bad. We have to talk about each thing. This one is better than that one. Okay, I'm not going to argue percentages with you. But I would say is you have to look at issues and say, in this issue he's great, in this issue he's not great. Instead of just becoming like a fan of saying, oh, he's amazing, he's fantastic, and now that he won, like the exuberance of Jews, like, it's just misplaced. And what do you do? What are you thinking? Remember who we are. We're a minority living in exile. Mashiach has not yet come until this moment. we gotta stay focused. And in 4 years, he's gonna be gone again. So like, what this I think it's just misplaced. I think we're looking to be able to celebrate something, and no, there's no reason for that. Dig down into who you are as a Jew, and that's your real celebration, and that's really where your trust and your faith has to be, not in any person, not the president, not anybody else, in no human being, only in Hashem. What do you say about that?
Sounds good to me.
And this takes us to the interview I had yesterday with the Free Press.
You had an interview?
Yes.
Someone called you up and said, "Hey, you want to talk for an interview?"
Well, obviously the introduction came through email, but yes, eventually it was an interview.
But I was the only one who interviewed you.
Right, you did for your.
Yeah, don't tell my professors that.
Nothing matters now about that. So he wanted to talk to me about the ceasefire in Israel.
Is this from the BU Daily Free Press, or is this from a different
Daily Free Press? Yes.
Yeah.
So I don't even know. Did you ever read the Daily Free Press when you were in school?
No, right. I never cared about it. I knew people who worked for it, but no, I never cared about it.
Do they still actually print the paper, or is it just online?
I think they print it and they walk around to BU places. The only article I can remember actually reading from it was something that had to do with the TV station when there was the whole issue with that professor. But yeah, I'm pretty sure as far as like when I was still there, they would, whenever the issue came out, like they would print it out and then they'd bring it to like the GSU and certain dining halls and whatever.
I don't know. I haven't seen it on the campus recently, past few years. Back in the day, before everything was on computer, yeah, it was all over the place, and we used to advertise in it because kids used to read it, and that if you wanted to get some traction with students, you would put an advertisement into the Daily Free Press. Now, like, what a waste of time. I mean, I don't even, anyway. But regardless, if one person sees it, it's worth it. But so. Is a ceasefire? He want to talk about whether the ceasefire is good or not good. Like he's an American kid, right? Typical American kid. Just has like a general understanding of it, but the language that he uses. And so my approach to him was, and there's a lot of talk about it. Is it good or is it not good? So number one is anytime a Jew's life is saved, it's fantastic, 100%. Can't argue with that. Of course, the issue then becomes, and there's numerous articles have been written about this from a halachic point of view. Can you to what degree can you go to save a Jew's life if there's a potential that it's going to cause harm to other Jews later on? That's really what that discussion is all about. The halachic parameters of that, what the circumstances are, is the time of war, not time of war. I don't get into the whole thing, and I didn't want to go with him that. I just said to him, and I think this is so important. When we get into the details of it, we get so caught up. Just in general, the whole thing makes no sense. It makes no sense. The terrorists come and they kidnap people out of Israel. Now they're going to decide how to give them back and how much they're going to get for giving them. I said to him, it's like if I went to your house and when I broke into your house and stole $1,000. And then you came to me and said, give me my money back. I said, okay, I'm going to give you back your money. I'm going to give you back $100 per week for 10 weeks. But every time I give you $100, I'm going to be able to come to your house and take something else that I want and keep it, which is exactly what's going on over here. So the whole discussion, you should have done it earlier, you should have done it later, who gets credit for it? The whole thing makes no sense. It's essentially wrong, whichever way you look at it. The fact that there's even a discussion is wrong. The fact that we're saying, oh, this was a good deal. This wasn't a good deal. No, the whole thing is bizarre. It's not normal. This is it's a criminal act, and there's no way you can justify anything about it. There's nothing good about it. Is it the best we could have done to get them back? Maybe, maybe not. But overall, like for America, and that's what. And after he asked me 100 questions, he said, "What? You want anything else you want to say?" I said, "I think American students need to educate themselves to understand exactly what's going on there before they make any form an opinion. Because when you understand the circumstances, which country would have allowed such a thing? You go into someone else's country, kidnap people from them, and then bargain with them how many convicted criminals they should release for you to give them back their innocent citizens? It's bizarre. It's not normal. And that's why this fits in with the other thing also. What Trump did or what he didn't do, it doesn't make a difference. The whole thing never should have happened. The world should never have allowed this to happen. The world, every single country in the world that have any decency said, like, you need to let those people go. There's no bargaining about it. You kidnapped innocent people. You have to let them go. End of story. It's not, and who gets the pressure? Israel gets the pressure. So once again, the bottom line is that we need to understand that we live in a world that our survival is not dependent on anybody, no people, no countries, doesn't matter how good they are, how nice they are to us. Of course, we have to work naturally and try to develop good relationships with other countries and other people. But we need to know that we as Jews, our connection, our survival is dependent on Hashem and our adherence to the laws that Hashem gave us to live by, which is the Torah and mitzvahs. That's the message. So my dear friends out there, this is the message. And remember this, man. When we talk to other people, get to discuss it in these terms. It's fun to talk about. It's interesting, politics, da, 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 da. But when it comes actually, who are we? We're the chosen people by Hashem, and we are here today not because by the grace of nobody who's done anything for us. It's only because Hashem wants us to be here and wants us to do Torah mitzvahs. That's the bottom line.
That it? We're good? I wasn't sure if there was more after that. Because usually it would be, Hashem wants us to do Torah and mitzvahs, and that'll bring the coming of Mashiach, and, speedily in our days. And then I say Amen, and then we're...
Right, you did it this time.
All right, so with that, I guess with the reverse of the ending, thank you so much for joining us for episode 92 of the Pos-cast, Rabbi Shmuel Posner, and we'll see you next week.